How's it going, guys? I'm Mike Dwyer from the Bunker Recordings and BetterMixes.com, and I want to do a little plugin review for you guys today. So we're going to be taking a look at Bassroom by Mastering the Mix. I haven't done any reviews yet on this channel because I'm very much of the philosophy that it's not the tools you use, it's how you use them. And I don't think you need to spend a ton of money on a ton of different plugins to get great mixes. In fact, I made a video not too long ago walking you through a drum mix I did using only the stock Pro Tools plugins. So if you want to check that out, I'll link it in the description down below. But I think this plugin could be really useful for people mixing out of their home studios. I know most of us aren't mixing out of amazing studios with purpose-built control rooms and perfect acoustic treatment. And when you're mixing someplace like a bedroom or a small home studio, even with some acoustic treatment, it can still be very challenging to get your low end right in your mix. So I think this plugin can really help with that. So basically, it is a 5-band EQ that only covers the range from 0 Hz up to 320 Hz. So it's really just focused in on the low end. And obviously the interface is a little funny. It is not what you would expect from a normal EQ. But essentially each one of these blocks represents a different frequency range, and they're listed on the side here. So this is 160 to 320 Hz. This is 80 to 160, 40 to 80, etc. And then by moving these blocks forward and backwards, you are boosting or attenuating that particular frequency range. So I guess you could kind of think of it like a graphic equalizer, since it has the fixed frequency bands and they're on sliders like that. So first things first, this EQ sounds really good. It's extremely transparent. I don't know what kind of magic they're working under the hood, but you can do some serious shaping to your low end without it sounding weird or unnatural. So to use this plugin, they recommend putting it as the last plugin in your mix bus chain besides your limiter, of course. And the reason for this is if you had it earlier in your chain, any EQ or compression or saturation or whatever that you were doing after it would kind of mess with your low end again. But besides just being a great sounding EQ, where this becomes really useful to home studio guys is with the targets. So if you go down here, they have a bunch of presets built in all different genres. So you can either choose one of those if that seems to fit well, or what I prefer to do is you can load in some reference tracks of your own. So here I've picked 3 of my favorite reference tracks that I think have really good sounding low end. And then I've gone in and highlighted just the chorus section of each one. Now I'll hit the Create Targets button, and what it's going to do is it's going to analyze the selected chorus of all 3 of these tracks, compare their low end to their mid-range and their high end, and create a target for us that's the average of the low end of these 3 tracks. So let's check that out. We'll hit Create Targets, close that. So I have the chorus in my song looped. So I'm going to hit play, and it's going to analyze my mix, and it's going to compare the low end to the low end of the tracks we loaded in. So let's see what we've got. So now you can see we have these little lines that showed up here. And what these represent is where the low end is in each one of these bands in the target that we created here. Now the beauty of this is it can really show you where problems might be in your low end. You don't necessarily just want to match it perfectly to this, just because that's what your reference tracks say. Because again, one, that's just an average. Each one of the songs is going to be a little bit different. But also, you're mixing a different song. It shouldn't necessarily have the exact same low end as these other ones, you know? So for instance, this low band here, which it's saying is 0.2 decibels off, that we can just leave at 0 for sure. That means our super subby low end here is pretty much spot on. It's showing we're about half a decibel low between 160 and 320. So again, that's probably fine just at 0, but we'll check that out. So really the 2 main parts I'd want to look at are this 40 to 80 Hertz, where it's recommending a 1.5 decibel boost, and this 20 to 40 Hertz area where it's recommending a 2 decibel cut. So what we can do, if you're on Mac, you can control-click on one of the bands. I'm not sure which modifier it would be if you're on PC. And that will solo the band, so we can listen to what's going on in that area. Hopefully you're listening on headphones or studio monitors, because otherwise you probably won't be hearing this. So you can hear there's a lot of the sub-energy of the kick drum going on there. So knowing that, it might make sense to go back into the mix, take a look at my kick drum, and maybe notch out a little bit of that low end. So here's the EQ that I have going on our kick drum. So obviously I'm already cutting a lot of this low end here, but I could either cut a little bit more, somewhere in that range, something like that. Or I can even just make this roll off a little steeper, so I'm cutting out a little more below 35 Hertz there. But for this example, let's try just putting a little dip down there. Something like that. So let's see if we like that better, worse, or sounds about the same to us. All right, so that's pretty subtle, but I do think I like it a little bit better with that cut in. It just seems to clean up the low end of the kick drum just a little bit. So now we'll go back to Bassroom and we will reanalyze. Cool. So you can see here that this is a lot closer now. It's now recommending about half a decibel. So that's totally fine. So now we could take a look at this one where it's recommending about 1.5 decibels. Let's take a listen. So that really could be our kick or our bass. Hard to say from there. Let's just listen to the whole mix again. I think that's probably more of the bass, but it's really not that off to me. So that's my favorite way to use Bassroom, is to use it as a mix analysis tool and then go back into my mix to fix any problems it might point out. But of course, you can just use it as a mix bus EQ, especially if you're mastering something and don't have access to the individual tracks. So for instance, let's turn that EQ move we did back off, get rid of that, so our mix is how it was. And now we'll reanalyze again and actually EQ this area in Bassroom as opposed to on our kick drum channel. Great, so like I said, we'll just duck this down a little bit, and let's see if that's better. So hopefully you can hear how well that cleans up the low end of the kick drum there. And again, even if you're only seeing 1.5 decibels or 2 decibels or whatever this was, that's not too big of a deal to be adjusting on the EQ here. But if it was recommending something like, a big 6 decibel cut there and a big 6 decibel boost here, then that would probably be something you'd want to check out your individual tracks for and find out where the problem is. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, be sure to leave a thumbs up and subscribe. And if you want to see more plugin reviews, let me know in the comments down below. Also, be sure to head over to bettermixes.com to grab a free copy of my Ultimate EQ cheat sheet.